So we're back. And this video should be shorter. That one was a bit long, but it was a lot of concept talking, right? There's a lot of kind of just discussion about things like your options for this, right? So what we now want to do is we really want to kind of make this part up here, right? And then kind of the invisible kind of connecting piece here, right? Now, you might not have a great picture of that connecting piece. So that's one of those things where if you want, you can make it up or just do one just like mine, particularly if you don't see it in the picture. But in this case, we need the kind of smaller cylinder spokes. And one of the things you'll notice is that there are cylinders inside of cylinders inside of cylinders. Now, could we, of course, make separate cylinders, place them in here, place them in here? Yes. You'd have to scale them down. You have to make sure they're aligned right. That would work fairly well. But we're going to take advantage of using a method we've already used before. And this will make sure that everything lines up properly for us. And that's just going to be extruding, moving, and scaling, right? We saw it on our bedpost. We saw it on the top of our lamp, right? We kind of did the revolve for the bulk of it, but then there's that last little part that connects the light bulb. We did it there. We even started seeing some of those basic elements even on the clock radio a little bit, right? So we're going to kind of get back to using that because it's really, really useful, right? It's a great, fast, easy way to do it. So in this case, I need faces, so I'm going to hold down right mouse button, face selection, right? And I'm going to hold down tab, right? Because remember, tab is our drag select, right? It is a button right here, modeling toolkit, though, so you can turn it on and leave it on. But it is a sticky key, right? So if you hold down tab, drag will stay on until you let go of tab. And remember, when tab's on, when you hold down tab and drag select's on, if you just hold down your left mouse button and just move it, it's a really quick, great way to select just those faces. Now, we've got that selected. Let's make sure there's no other faces on this guy. F for frame selection. Yep, okay, there we go. Now, in this case, we'll hit R for scale. And we might need to kind of just switch back to world or edit component reset, right? So sometimes if it's stuck, just go to edit pivot reset, right? And then it'll kind of reset itself. But that's just edit pivot. And you'll notice that when your cursor's off, there's a reset option. You just left click and it resets it. And you'll see that'll do it for all of them, right? All right. So in this case, what we want to do is we want to create new geometry here. So I'm going to extrude, all right? And then I'm going to hit R for scale because it sets a world. And we're going to scale this in a little bit, right? So I left click, drag in the center one. It just scales it in just a little bit, right? So it creates this kind of lip here, right? Remember, that's just 1 for low res, 3 for smooth preview. But we want that little lip there because there's that little lip there, right? And then we'll extrude again. Hit W for move, because in this case I don't want to move along normal direction, I just want to move straight up and down. So usually, probably like 70% of the time, when I extrude, I want to just use the regular move tool to move it exactly where I want to, just along a certain axis. You did see on our spokes, though, the extrude along normal direction is sometimes amazing and awesome. But it's kind of more like 30% of the time. All right, so this time I want to move down a little bit, so I did create that second extrusion. I'm going to move it down a little bit, not a lot, because I want to create a bit of a crease there. And we'll extrude again. W for move it down. And now you see how we've kind of created the nice little kind of in part here, right? Because we need to have enough solidity on the inside of the cylinder here. So now what I do is I extrude again, hit W for move, and I move this up. Because what we're going to do is we're just going to keep extruding to create the second cylinder. I'll extrude again, W for move it up. Extrude again. Remember, the quick key for extrude is Control E. But I just like to make sure you guys see it in the menu. There we go. And I'll extrude again. R for scale, because this time around we want to create another lip right here, right? So we scale this time in a little bit. So it creates that second little lip there. And then we can extrude again. W for move it down a bit, just so we get a little bit of that crease there. Extrude. W for move, right? Move it down again. And you see how we're kind of creating these cylinders inside of cylinders without having to create them as separate and then scale them down and then position them, which would be pretty easy in its own right, but this is also pretty fast and easy. And it gets us great practice with shaping, right? So we extrude again, W for move, and the benefit is everything already lines up perfectly. Extrude again, bring this up. Now one of the things you'll notice is it looks like this actually does taper a little bit when it gets up higher here. So I'll do another extrusion, actually undo, sorry. R for scale, I'm going to scale it in just a little bit, just to get a little bit of taper. Not a lot, just a little bit. There we go. And then we'll do another extrusion that we can move up. And we can maybe scale that one in a little bit just to kind of enhance that taper. Just gives it a little bit of taper. And I'm actually going to move that down a little bit though too, because we probably want that small little guy there available. All right. And now what we'll do is we'll do another extrusion. R for scale to scale it in a little bit to create that lip there. And we'll extrude down again. W for move it down. Extrude again, W for move it down. And then extrude again. This time W for moving it up, right? We're grabbing that green arrow, the Y-axis, to move it straight up. And we'll extrude W for move it one more time. There we go. Now at this point, we don't really need those extra polygons there, so if we want, we can just delete those, right? Just delete key. And now you see that we have this. Now, the thing is we've done that a couple times, haven't we? Right? This is not the first time we've done this. This is absolutely no different than the bedpost, right? The top on a bedpost. It's no different than the little top part that we did on our lamp, right? Remember, we have those full videos for it. It's just using the extrude tool with move and scale to create shape. Extrusion creates the new geometry that we can move up and down, and scale allows us to kind of change the size to make it a little thinner, a little thinner, a little thinner, right? Now, the thing though is, the thing you have to be aware of with this is that these should be separate parts because they are separate parts in real life. So how do we do that? Well, it's actually quite easy, and we've used this tool before as well. We use it on our clock radio to separate specific faces out, and we use it even on our doorway for our room. So one of the ways that we can start this off is, put our cursor over the object, hold down right mouse button for face, and I can just, get my camera pretty close to the side, and I can just do a small little left click drag, right? Just hold down your left mouse button, drag, get this little box, and just make sure the box just touches those top guys. Remember, 4 for wireframe, that way you can kind of see if it's got any extra stuff that you didn't expect it to. 5 for shaded. Remember that the button's right here, but the quickies are 4 and 5. Kind of even tells you right there, right? And that's got those selected. Now, another way we can select is, if we want to, is to select a face, and then if you shift double click on the face next to it, it'll select the face loop. And depending on which direction the faces are, like if it's this direction, it selects the face loop that way. If it's this direction, it selects the face loop this way. But if you select the face and then shift double left click on the face next to it, it'll select that face loop. Kind of cool, right? Now 4 for wireframe, because we can see there's kind of an extra row inside of here. Remember, there is select, grow, and shrink. We've seen this a couple times also, right? The quick keys for those are shift period, shift comma. You'll see there's kind of already got quick keys for them. Remember, grow will expand that selection to incorporate the things that are next to the already existing selection. Shrink will do the opposite. So remember, Maya has this actually pretty standard grow and shrink, right? Grow and shrink features. In fact, pretty much everything you guys are learning in Maya applies to 3D Studio Max, applies to Blender, applies to Modo. You go to another software and you just have to figure out where their grow and shrink is, where their add edge loop is, where their extrude is, where their bevel is. Because they all basically have the same tools. And it's really just a question of usability and better or worse interfaces, making it easier to get to these tools. Maya is pretty good at that stuff. It's got a pretty good workflow and pretty good interface. But remember, grow and shrink, right? I didn't need to have 4 on wireframe to show that, but it just helps you to see a little better what's going on. So with those faces selected, remember, there is in the Edit Mesh menu, Extract. We've seen Duplicate several times, and in fact, we'll still see it some more this semester. And we've seen Extract a couple times already too. So Edit Mesh Extract, remember what that does is it takes whatever polygons you have selected and it separates them into a new object, right? This separate will not do that. This separate only works for objects that were combined, right? So if I combine several objects but they never touch, like our armrests, remember when we mirrored it over, they're one object, but they don't touch, separate can separate those. But if I was to bridge some of the faces from kind of one side of the armrest to the other to making them one continuous mesh, separate wouldn't work. You would have to use extract. So separate does not, it can do something kind of similar, but it needs polygons to not be connected, which in this case, these are fully continuous, connected. So edit mesh duplicate, and there we go. Now you'll notice, you'll see green and white wireframes. It'll go to low res. It's supposed to do that. So if I hit 3, and I hit Q, because remember 3 is smooth preview, 1 is low res, and I also hit Q, because remember Q is your quick key for your selection tool, right? You'll notice that if I go back to object mode, these are separate objects. All right, so if I hit W to move this, you'll see how this is fully separate. I think I accidentally duplicated. I'm going to undo a step. I think that I accidentally hit duplicate instead of extract. So edit mesh, extract. There we go. Hit 3, hit Q. Hold down right mouse button to make sure in object mode. And you'll notice that this is a true separate object. Right? So you see how there's no original one in there? You also see how easy it can be to accidentally duplicate instead of extract because they're right on top of each other. So that actually makes them truly separate objects. Now you will see that your pivot is way down here. That is because this object used to be part of this, and that's where the center for this was at. So these will usually keep the original center. Remember, modify, center pivot. That'll just recenter. And then we keep doing the same thing here, right? Hold down right mouse button of the object, face. If I want, I can just do the little left click drag to create that box. Select grow. Select grow. If I want, I can hit 4 just to make sure it kind of extended down into there, which it did. 5 will turn it back to shaded. And then I can go to edit mesh, extract. And I can hit 3 to put it back into smooth preview, Q to set it back to regular selection tool. And then of course, hold down right mouse button, make sure you're in object mode because sometimes it still thinks you're in face mode. And if you want to center your pivot, modify, center, pivot. But now you see how this is fully separate as well. And so these can properly move up and down like a kind of like they would as a telescope for the normal stuff. And then we'll do this one more time. Hold down right mouse button for face selection. Now remember, you can of course do the little box select if you want to, but you can also just, left click, shift double left click to select the face loop. And then of course, grow selection from the select menu. That is shift period though. See how there's a quick key for that. 4 just to make sure, and you see how there's actually a little bit more down here, so I'll grow it one more time. Select grow. So sometimes just going to 4 for wireframe just to see that it's all the way down is not a bad idea. 4, 5, right? 4, 5. There we go. And then of course, edit mesh extract. We can hit Q to go to our regular selection tool. Hit 3 to put those back into smooth preview. And you notice how it's kind of still thinking it's in face mode, even though you're seeing the green and white wireframe. Sometimes Maya gets confused. Hold down right mouse button. Object mode. There we go. And of course, if we want to center pivot, modify center pivot. And now those are fully separate objects. So this is great practice. You actually learn a little more doing it this way. It's honestly fast and easy. It probably really works about as quick as just making separate cylinders. But you get more enforcement of extract. You get to see modify center pivot a little bit more, as well as just extruding, moving, and scaling, right? It's often pretty easy to make things as one part and then break them up later on, right? So that way they have this continuous lined up, snapped flow, and then you can always break them into separate objects by extracting them later on. So this is a great fast way to do that, but technically just making some separate cylinders and placing them in there would work fairly well, but you'd still have to do these extrusions, scales, and moves to create the kind of the lips that go in here. And so at that point, you might as well just extrude up, do it again, extrude up, and then extract. It'll be about the same amount of time. All right, and that now gives us pretty much the whole lower part of the chair except for the wheels. And the last thing I want to do quickly, and I'm just going to move these all down just a little bit because I think we need a little more space there for the cushion. The last thing we want to do is make the little connector part. And this will be a great way of me showing you guys how to use your extrude bridge border edge again, but on something even simpler than the clock radio. Now, oftentimes you'll see kind of like a squashed sphere in a kind of an arch for these mounted parts. And that's what I'm going to make here for us. So I'm going to go to create polygon primitive sphere. Now I'm going to go to the options box for the sphere because I want it to be pretty simple, right? So I'm figuring probably 8 by 8 will work well for us. So I'll just go 8 by 8. I also want it to be on the y-axis so that the stars are on the top and bottom, right? So y-axis, so the sphere goes up and down this way. And I want it to be 8 by 8 because we're going to use smooth preview on it. So click create. Now this one I'm just going to move up a little bit. Remember, W for move. Grab that green arrow, move it up. R for scale. And we can just left click drag on that center guy right there. Now I can make him up here and then move him down later on if I want to. So I'm going to keep him up here for now. I do want this to be squashed though. So I'm going to grab the green handle here and just drag it down to make it more squashed. Remember, Alt middle moves, Alt right zooms, Alt left rotates. F for frame selection. That's a great way to kind of have your camera zoom in and set its rotate around the object. Now in this case, I'm going to hold down right mouse button over the object, right? Hold down your right mouse button over it, face. And then I can just left click drag that little box select again, right? So remember, your default is pick marquee. And if you hold down left mouse button and drag, it creates this box. Whatever this box touches or is inside of the box will get selected. So sometimes drag select's great, sometimes selecting edge loops and face loops is great, sometimes pick marquee is great. And in this case, see how it just grabs the top ones, right? 4 for wireframe, you can see how it's just grabbing the top ones. 5 shaded. I'm going to delete those, right? Delete. How do you delete? Guys, there's a key on your keyboard that says delete. That's how you delete, guys, right? It's the DEL. Guys, delete. How do you delete? You delete, right? You go to edit mesh, look, control delete, right? You go to edit mode here, delete, right? It's one of those things where just delete on your keyboard deletes. So I've got half a sphere, but I want to turn this kind of into like an arch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn symmetry on, right? In this case, World Z. There we go. And I'm going to go to edge mode. So remember, put your cursor over the object, hold down right mouse button, edge. And I'm going to select this edge, and then I'm going to shift left click to select the edge next to it. Not all the way around, just 2 front ones. And I'm going to extrude those. Now I'm going to hit W for move, and I'm going to move them forward a little bit on the red axis, right? But I'm also going to move them out a little bit on the blue. And you notice how your symmetry being on keeps this center one from moving off. And you see how I've kind of created this little lip. But that wasn't move. I extruded. I wanted new geometry here. There's a new row of polygons. All right. Now in this case, I'm going to maybe go to vertex mode, right? Hold down right mouse button, vertex. Grab this vertex here. Move it back and out a little bit, just so it's kind of a little bit more flat with this back part there. Remember, put your cursor over your object, hold down right mouse button, edge. Go back to edge. And you see how we're extruding border edges here, just like we did with our clock radio, right? And we've actually done that a couple of other times. So remember, these kinds of edges, right, they have 2 faces connected to them. These are not border edges. You extrude those, that creates non-manifold geometry. That's bad, right? We extrude that and pull it out. You see how it creates this weird pinching. You'll notice that if I go to multi-cut, it won't work through that area, right? So it just stops there. Even if I try to do bevel. So that's non-manifold geometry. That's 3 faces connected to a single edge, right? 1, 2, 3. That's generally sucks. That is not good geometry. If you've got a lot of non-manifold geometry, you're being careless, right? Do not extrude edges unless they're border edges. A border edge is an edge that only has 1 face connected to it, right? This edge has 2 faces connected to it. So when you extrude it out, it'll have 3, creating that weird geometry structure, which is called non-manifold, and that's not good. And I've talked about that a couple times. Never hurts to hear about it again, right? So just keep that in mind, right? As we're working. Extrude only border edges, right? Or edge loops. So I'm going to select this edge, still a border edge, so only got 1 face connected to it. Extrude. Hit W for move. We can move it out a bit. And remember, if you want to flatten this up a little bit more, R for scale, and you just scale towards the center of the axis you want to flatten on, and it stops at 0, and that flattens it along that axis. And then I'll extrude out again, W for move it back. And now you see we're creating something out of Star Trek, right? It's kind of like a Star Trek ship. But it's, once again, showing you how versatile and flexible the extrude border edge method is. In this case, it's on something quite simple, not nearly as complicated as the clock radio, but it does give us that great practice, right? So this is like the little mini clock radio exercise. Now in this case, I want to bridge across, because remember, you can bridge border edges. But once again, don't bridge regular edges. Just extruding and bridging should be done on only border edges. An edge that's only got 1 face connected to it. When you got bridge or extrude, it'll create 2, which is normal, right? So remember, bridging across this way can do weird stuff. So usually we turn symmetry off when we want to do this bridge. So I'll hit bridge, and you see how it creates new geometry, right? And in this case, I want some divisions. So remember, the bridge options come up, and you can type in the number of divisions you want, right? So you can highlight that and type in a number. But remember, if you click on the word, and left click drag, so you hold down your left mouse button and drag left or right, it's interactive. And in this case I want 3 because I do want an edge loop right down the center just like these, but I do want this extra edge loop. So bridge, and you can give divisions. It's also great because we have to practice our bridge tool a little bit more, right? I'll turn symmetry back on, World Z, grab this edge, move it back a little bit to kind of create that little gap for us. Then I could select these two because remember, when we want to bridge these, we only want same number to same number, right? I did one edge to one edge. This is 2 edges to 2 edges. I'll turn symmetry off just in case. Bridge. Now in this case, a division of 0 is fine. But you see how bridge really just creates geometry between 2 separate areas, just like a bridge would do in real life. Pretty much every package I've ever used calls extrude, extrude, calls bridge, bridge, calls bevel, bevel. Edge loop adding tools like multi-cut are a little bit different, like it's called loop cut in Blender. It's called add edge loop in Modo. In Maya it's called multi-cut because it's actually a couple of different tools. Usually it'll be something called cut though, right, for adding edge loops. But bridge is for creating bridges. There we go. Now remember, there's a hole here now, but you see how this is self-contained? It's closed, right? It's not open somewhere. So these are holes. I'm going to turn my symmetry back on though. So World Z. And all you have to do is click on a single edge on that hole. And remember, you can go to Mesh, Fill Hole. And you notice how these are basically all the things we were seeing on our clock radio? Extruding border edges, bridging border edges, working with symmetry. We're trying to get you guys more practice at using these so you get more comfortable. Also just trying to show you all the different cool ways that this technique can be used. Now in this case, I need this to look thickened on the top. I don't need it thickened, right? Remember, sometimes we want to thicken stuff, but sometimes we just want it to look thickened. In this case, we're not going to see the top. It's going to be inside the chair. So I'm just going to make it look thickened by adding some extra geometry here. So remember, I'm in edge mode, right? Hold down right mouse button, edge. Double left click to select that border edge loop. Extrude. I can hit W to move it up a little bit. Extrude. W to move it up some more. And now you see how I've got the illusion of thickness. And now all I really want to do is maybe sharpen this shape up a little bit and this one back here. So we can go to multi-cut. Hold down Control to put an edge loop there and see how it sharpens it a little bit. And then hold down Control to put an edge loop back there to kind of sharpen that a bit too. And now we have a squashed sphere that turns into an arch. And it was just a bit of symmetry, a bit of extruding and bridging border edges, a little bit of filling hole. And those are things we've done before, right? So it's great to get that practice. I'm going to hit W for move it down. R to scale it in a little bit. And you see how this kind of works as your little kind of connecting of this to the chair. Now you might not have a good picture of that, so if you want to just kind of make something like mine and do it exactly like I'm doing the videos, awesome, that's totally cool, right? But that'll be a great place to stop, and what we'll do is we'll make the wheels next week. So there we go.